What is going on, everybody? This is Jeff Lightsy Jr. here with the Black Boss Channel. Thank you guys for tuning in tonight. We have our special guest, Mr. T. Khalik and Dr. Reginald Caldwell. And we have a serious topic to discuss tonight, and that is the topic of black masculinity and this rise in the trend of seeing the famous entertainer, the famous athlete, the famous black man wearing a dress. It is something that I've seen a recent trend, and I wanted to try to get some perspective. And so I brought in these intelligent brothers to come and discuss about it today, and what it means to them, what they think it means to the society in the whole, and all of the above. And so, first, Dr. Caldwell, I'm going to ask you. There's been a bunch of images. The most shocking one I want to say was the Russell Westbrook wearing a dress recently. I think it was New York Fashion Week that he was attending. Just when you saw the image, what did you see when you saw this brother who is an aggressive athlete, who was a professional athlete, out at this New York Fashion Week wearing what looked to be a skirt or dress? What were your first initial thoughts?
I said buck broken. Two words, buck broken. I said there's no way in the world that a man who's making the money that he makes needs to be controlled by anyone who tells him to put on a dress and says that it's fashionable. It totally goes against all codes of masculinity. Uh, what he was presenting to our community as being the biggest and the best is not what we're looking at as people who are over 30, but I'm thinking about our young children who are under 25 years old, who have watched Russell Westbrook from when he played at UCLA, which is when I watched him, and then when he came onto the scene in the NBA, and now seeing what he's evolved into. Great ball player, but on the side now you're wearing dresses for what? You have nothing else to prove. You've been an MVP. You've been assist three, triple double guy, all star. What does defining your career by putting a dress do for you? You're in a position where you can win a world championship. You're going to the Hall of Fame. So why would you screw up that whole legacy with being known as the person who wore a dress at the height of your career in professional basketball? That was my whole dilemma with it when I saw it. Why?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was a big why. Tia, I'm asking you this: when they say it's fashion, and when people just say, "Hey, man, it's fashion. I can do this." Why is it such a big deal to you? Why is it such a big deal seeing heterosexual black men with of status out in public and in the media wearing skirts and or dresses or fingernail polish and all this different kind of stuff that's taking place?
Because I agree with what the previous brother said. It's just to emasculate black men because you got to understand when you're dealing with a group of masculine, strong black men, we can start a movement. I mean, we've seen what happened with our black brothers who came before us. Let's take a look at the Nation of Islam. Look at how strong those brothers are. They produce men like Muhammad Ali. They produce men like Malcolm X. And these black men had such a they were very, very intellectual, and they was able to get a lot of black people to follow them. So when you want to make sure that the black man doesn't have any ability to compete, you want to make sure the black man is in a submissive position. You want him to be as close to the woman as he possibly can be, because this is not a sexist statement, but there's no historical point ever where there was a rebellion led by strictly women. It's always been the men. And men are the protectors of every community. And men are also the people who tear down systems. If there's war, it's always one group of men going to war with another group of men to stop any type of oppression or to defend their communities. But if the men are like the women and children and they're hiding and they're not fighting and they're not protecting anyone, then any influence can come into the black community, affect our minds, and have us push all types of agendas that is destructive to us. So that's why they're having heterosexual, they're not even putting gay men. They're intentionally targeting heterosexual men that black women typically like who are being called sexy, and they're putting them in dresses. That's what this is about, man.
Once again, we're talking about what the rise, I'd say, in heterosexual men. I don't know if you want to call it cross dressing, but wearing dresses, skirts. I've seen a lot of fingernail polish, a lot of things that typically you'd see from a woman or what you would consider feminine taking
Hmm.
place not just in Hollywood or on sets or movies or TV shows. Like they're going out in public doing these kind of things. We welcome in Mr. Tony Lindsay. Tony, I asked Dr. Caldwell and T about what's taking place in the rise of seeing more feminine type things taking place with high celebrities and entertainers. What are your thoughts when you see guys like Russell Westbrook or Lil Nas X or whoever wearing dresses, fingernail polish in the public sphere and kind of just broadcasting that throughout everywhere? What are your thoughts, your initial thoughts when you see that kind of stuff?
Well, personally, I don't really have a problem with what certain individuals do with their lives, with their sexuality, and things of that nature. But I think when we start to ascribe certain labels, like, this is what heterosexuality is, this is what, masculinity is. And often masculinity, it's always labeled as toxic. So I think when we always put these labels on things, the easiest way to judge people, to keep conflict, is when we subscribe to labels. I think, like, with an example like this guy, Lil Nas X, right?
Yes.
Right. I don't really follow the dude or whatever, but I mean, look, man. Whatever you do with your life, it's your business. You know what I'm saying? Gay or straight. But we have to admit that there is a concerted effort to reward and incentivize Black men to engage in effeminate behavior. I mean, we know that that is the truth when it comes to entertainment, Hollywood, just this social environment in general. And the problem most people have, from what I see with Lil Nas X, is it's not his sexual preference. See, this is how we always kind of scapegoat things. The problem that most people have with Lil Nas X, it's not his sexual preference. It's the bastardization and the tasteless exhibition of it. And
Hmm.
as would similarly be regarded with straight men or women. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Hmm.
look, his stuff is trashy, and quite frankly, it's stupid to me. It has nothing to do with his sexuality, but I just think the the tasteless display of the things that he puts out are what bring down the fire on him. Just like
Hmm.
people, they got smoke for Cardi B, which and what's was it Meg The Stallion? Some of the imagery that they put out there. People always say, "Oh, y'all don't say that about women," but when gay men, that's not true. That's not true. People have a problem with these tasteless displays that seem to be the norm now.
Once again, we're talking to our all black panel about what's taking place and some of the things in our community. Be sure to the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe. Now, Dr. Caldwell, you said something earlier. I want to touch back on it. You talked about the demasculization of black men, and then Tony brought up toxic masculinity and things are like that. Well, one thing I will say is, why is it that you believe in, and I'll go to Dr. Caldwell and then anybody can answer, why do you believe that there is an attack on black men and black masculinity? What would you say is the cause behind that? If I'm playing devil's advocate and I ask you, like, you keep telling me that there's this attack on black men and black masculinity, why do you believe that is something that is taking place?
Well, this is one of the 9 areas of activity that Neely Fuller talked about in his book. And he talked about the fact that when you can keep people sexually confused, then you have them dominated. Um, if you could control entertainment, which is what we're controlled by in our society, and it's not by us, it's by other people, then we're dominated. So when you talk about the attack on black masculinity, it's how do we use propaganda to make sure that black men never see themselves as in a fully self-actualized male in the position of power. Okay, we always look at ourselves, we'll always have to look at ourselves as in a position of weakness. uh, in our society, we know that we men are the dominant uh, gender. So what do we do to black men? We have to make sure that they only see themselves as three things: as a boy, as a girl or as a woman. And if we begin to show them positive images of them being the protector, as Tony said, the outward presence of protection of a family and seeing him in an authoritative role, then we know that society sees it as if they're not doing their job, because we're always to see ourselves as being emasculated. Go back to the movie Baby Boy, okay? And we see a lot of our rappers and a lot of our actors calling themselves little this and boy this. Go back to when he was talking about the book Neely Fuller and the John Singleton was talking about when Tyrese was in the belly of his mother, and he was a grown man, but he was in the belly of his mother. And he began to quote some of Dr. Francis Cress Welsing's book, The ISIS Papers. And he says, Black men never see themselves as being fully self-actualized as a man, because society does not allow that. They have certain systems in place that would always reduce you to a subservient role as a boy. When we go and look at all entertainment from the beginning, going back to Birth of a Nation, it was always to make Black men look as if they're infantile, okay, always in a childlike state. So although we're human, we're
Right.
human, genetically formed in age as far as chronologically, we're always will be seen as being a boy in a boy-like state. So that is the attack, is to keep us from seeing ourselves as being a male, as being a protector, but to always see ourselves as Black men in a childlike state, always needing help from someone else other than being able to provide for ourselves and be able to provide for your family.
Absolutely. Tony, did you have something?
No, right. Yeah, I was just gonna say that, I mean, I 100% agree with Dr. Corwell. I mean, there's actually historical context to where Black men, during the early 1900s were really like described as women as compared to white men. Like they were described and viewed as almost like children to white men, whereas they aspired to be like them. There's always been this infantilization, this demeaning, this very where you kind of make men really, really soft and harmless, or Black men soft and harmless. And we know what that is. There's a real fear in this society of Black masculinity, Black men. And there has always been, and there always will be some efforts to try to, keep that at bay, because, we are the protectors of our community. So how do it's just basically a way of destroying that protection.
T, I want to ask you this. What about, I posted these questions because I was seeing a lot of the rise of it, and we'll add Dr. Maurice Green in as well. He'll join the conversation. I saw a lot of people talking about, when I was seeing the dresses and the fingernail polish, and I was asking these questions, I was like, what's going on? Is this a trend? Is this a fad? And one of the guys a guy that I know that does partake in some of these kind of fashion trends and things, it was like, man, I get women doing this, man. I do this because I can, and I can rock it. I can pull it off, and it ain't stopping me from getting no women or getting no money. To that kind of thinking, is that something we should be socially acceptable? It's like, okay, yeah, he says get women who are good with us, but what do you hear when you hear a statement like that?
Well, first I got a question when he says he's get women, because I don't know. A lot of women I talk to are not rocking with dudes that act in any remotely way like a female. They all say we don't want men acting like that. So I don't know what he's talking about there. But to get back to your point, that's a fact, man. But to get back to your point, brother, this to me is job well done from the media, because you got to understand, in a lot of Black art, a lot of Black media, these men are the forefront of Black men. These men are the ones who propel. They are the ones who speak for our issues. They are just the ones who get plastered everywhere. So when the media keeps repeating this over and over into Black people's heads and young Black men's heads, unfortunately, they start seeing it as fact. They're going to start believing it, and they're going to start thinking it's okay. They're not seeing that this is the reason why, like, Black people are not coming together and solving their own problems. And like Dr. Caldwell said, and Tony said, It's the infantilization of black men not being serious contenders in anything. If you look at the media, black men are not being brought up to discuss the economics of the United States. You know, we're not being brought up to discuss climate change or just like important issues. You know, they only bring us up when they need us to discuss something going on with some LGBT community or anything that's a social issue that's police violence. But
Or
anything
if they
that's
need somebody
substance
to cry.
that gives us power, yeah, anything that's power that gives our community power and elevates us into a different economic level, they're not bringing us on because they don't see us as that. We're just pawns. So these panels and brothers like us, we gotta just keep coming out and speaking against this.
Hmm.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to bring in Dr. Maurice Green. Dr. Green, how are you? We're talking about just the demasculization of the black men, some of the trends in fashion that we've seen. I've seen a rise in men wearing skirts or dresses and fingernail polish. Just when you see those things, have you seen? First, I want to ask you: have you seen kind of those trends, and what are your thoughts when you see those kind of things?
Right. So, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. So obviously it's something that we see, right? I think the latest one that I paid attention to was Russell Westbrook's
Yes.
um, coming out with a dress and then in essence daring people to say something about it. I think, I mean, so I think it just depends, right? So obviously, if Russell Wilson would have come out in a regular suit, no dress, we would not be talking about it, right? So I think it's one of those situations where people know the kinds of things that will create or elicit controversy, and I think often we kind of fall for it. And so it's kind of like we engage in it, which gives it legs. Now, so I think whether if Russell Westbrook wants to wear a dress, that's his prerogative. I mean, the far-reaching ramifications of how it affects the image of black men. I mean, I think that's. I mean, I don't think it's a hard, definitive yes, right? One of the other things that I noticed was one of the memes on the internet suggests that you should not Google, go to YouTube and put baby videos, right? Have you guys seen that?
Yes.
Yep.
And
Yes.
so you get two pictures and you get black men naked in prison, right? So if you're not aware of a deliberate and intentional attempt to present black men with very specific orientation and classification, then you're probably asleep. But the dress thing, um, I personally would wear a dress. I don't know many men that will wear a dress. And in relation, and specifically answering one of the questions you said before about the brother that said, well, I can still get girls or women, even though I wear this kind of vibe. I think that also is a trope, right? Because then it suggests that the primary objective of a black man is soliciting or trying to get black women's attention, right? And we're a lot more complicated than that, and we're a lot more thoughtful than that. And I think it just relegates us to the hunt for women. And so if I can still get women, then this is okay. So I think there's a backhanded kind of attack or misrepresentation of black men and black masculinity in that commentary.
So Dr. Green, I want to ask you this. I want to make sure I'm clear. You don't believe that seeing a Russell Westbrook, and I just now, let me make sure I'm not screwing your words up. This is why I want clarity. Like you said, like just seeing him like that picture is just kind of like you don't think that is a overarching like big land shift of like black masculinity or anything like that, or is it?
So to answer that question as directly as I possibly can, it depends.
Okay.
Right? At a certain point, you see what people are doing, right? And then it's no longer surprising, right? So was it Dave Chappelle that talked about how they tried to get him into a dress?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so this is years and years and years ago. It's like, I want a dress. And then, they kept trying to put him in a dress, trying to put him in a dress.
Yeah.
So the precedent is there, right? And he's like, I don't want to wear it, right? So we know that's there. So here comes Russell Westbrook in a dress that's like, hey, at this point, if that's how you want to rock, I mean, I think that if you don't know that this is a trend of putting black men in dresses, right, then you're not paying attention, right? So I'm at the point where not only am I no longer surprised, but it's almost like a dog whistle, right? We know what's going to get the attention of the masses. Let's put this masculine looking, aggressive black man and stick him in a dress. It's like, oh, you're pulling that one again. Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Knock yourself out. I think we have other things that we need to concern ourselves with. And they knew this when, I'm not saying he knew this, but I think the people that were advising him, say, hey, that looks good, knew that if he put on a tux, we would not be talking about him, right? About, oh, Russell Westbrook wore a tux. We put him in a dress, Black America goes on fire. And that's exactly what they want. And so, in essence, sometimes we end up giving it legs, right? We end up, pushing the narrative, and now it's even it's bigger. It's Black America. Black Twitter is going crazy. And then it's the setup, right? It's the okie doke, because you can't critique it, because then what do you? It's that toxic masculinity, right? It's like a setup. It's like chess. You see the trap coming. The question is whether you want to play that move and say, okay, let me see if I'm going to fall into this, and say, hey, I think that this is this. That's what it is. You are a toxic masculine man. It's like, okay, you know what? We're all grown. We see the tricks. So now let's figure out what we need to do to really impact our communities in ways that are significant, quantifiable, and long lasting.
Absolutely, absolutely. Once again, we're talking to our all black panel just about black masculinity and what's taking place in our community, whether it is hurtful, harmful, progressive, fashionable. I mean, there's so many words that can be used when describing some of these different kinds of trends, these different kinds of things that are taking place. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe. Now, Tony, I want to ask you this, though. There will be people that push back on some of the trends that are taking place now, not only just calling it fashion, but they'll say, hey, Prince wore feminine clothing or did whatever, right? He was a mass entertainer, and he's someone that fought for independence for artists and specifically in the black community. Like, nobody said nothing to him. Or Michael Jackson wore things that were what could be considered feminine or questionable. Nobody said nothing to him. So why is it that we're on this case? Why is it now that we're fighting, pushing back against what some of the younger artists or younger generation is doing? Is that something that is realistic or comparable when you see these kind of things?
Honestly, I don't know, because it's kind of like when you talk about Prince, and then you're talking about Russell Westbrook, you're talking about one guy that was always presented as, always presented himself as very masculine, and another one who's always been kind of effeminate. Me, honestly, I think the problem is that we're just too focused on idols, in my opinion. Like, why is it that the behavior of one person here, or the way this one dresses, that's supposed to automatically represent the entire community? I mean, honestly, to be honest, I'm tired of it. It's like any other group. When you have so many people from other communities that come out dressed crazy, doing all types of crazy stuff, but it's never put on the entire community. Oh, this is what they do, and this is about them. Now, we do know that there is a specific campaign to depict black men in a certain fashion. So this situation is a little bit unique. But at the same time, what do they say? You are what you answer to, like that old saying. So it's like, for me personally, it's not important enough. Like, but I know that there are other people out there who I guess can, like, they get upset about it. But I think, like, nothing that these guys do threatens my masculinity. It doesn't threaten me as a man. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's a message that we need to more so convey to other people. That's them. Okay, that's what they're doing right there. So that's cool. Just make sure we know that's them, and leave it over there. That's their decision.
Dr. Caldwell, do you have a response?
But Tony, that's the whole purpose, is to get us to let our guard down. It's not about us. I mean, as I said before we got on air, I said we're all above 30. What their specific attack is for our young children. I work in public schools, and I see how our children are being neutered. They don't want to have our young men, young black males, not men, young black males expressing themselves. They don't want them having energy or showing any type of boy-like behavior, because that's all that it is. When a lot of these female teachers come to me and say, "Why does he act like that?" I say, "He's just being a boy. That's how boys do. They have to burn off steam." When you look at our physical makeup, we have more muscle tone most of the time, not all the time. So you have to burn that energy off. It's a shame that you ask a kid to come to class and sit there for 90 minutes. That's criminal to me, because that child needs time to get up and stand up, walk around. I allow that in my classes, but I think about all the other classes that they have with other females. So when you're forcing a child to hold in what is a natural disposition for them, we have to think about that. When you tell a kid that he can't talk, well, if you talk, well, what you said is stupid. There's so many things that are playing out in our classrooms. There's so many things that are playing out that we really don't understand, that is dealing with the social emotional lives of our black males. And so when they see, okay, this is happening to me at school, and then when they go home in their own personal lives and they see their heroes being effeminate, not standing up for what's right.
But my point was really so much about, like, we have to be in control of the vessel of
exactly
where they see their heroes.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
But
I'm
we
my
don't have
son's
that.
hero. Russell Westbrook, Lil Nas X, none of those dudes are my son's hero. I'm my son's hero.
Right.
So,
but Tony, that's what I'm saying, is that until we control these outlets, and until we're able to put our young men in programs, and we control the programs and are able to deprogram them when they come home or wherever they are in our communities, that's what we don't control. So this is what we have to understand is out there, that our kids are absorbing this. There's nowhere that you can go.
I agree.
Cartoons,
so I
Netflix.
want to address.
Let's Dr. Green get in. Yeah.
Everywhere.
Go ahead.
So, Tony, so this is what's great about being around brilliant men. It makes you think, right? So you said something that was really that kind of triggered something, right? So it was said a long time ago, right? And I don't know who was the first one to point it out. Maybe it was Malcolm X. And they pointed out that the black community, and is the only community that society pulls in leaders, and they're actors, comedians, athletes, right? If you want to call a Chinese coalition of leaders, or Puerto Rican or Jewish, they're not calling the comedians, right? They're not calling the athletes, right? They're calling the scholars, the activists, the scientists, the mathematicians, right? So we know that this is something that they do. So if that's the case, when we look at Russell Westbrook, right, and we say, oh, Russell Westbrook represents our community, right, and he's so weighty, are we not actually giving weight to the fact that we look up to these people as leaders when we know they're really not leaders, right? They aren't representative of our community, our masculinity, our children, even though they're influencers, right? They're famous, right? But like you said, we have to be able to, well, we're not going to control the media, we're not going to control the narrative, but we can determine what is important to us and what is not. Like, so one of the reactions to him in a dress could have been like, Russell Westbrook's in a dress. Okay, next thing. So what are we doing about the school, police in the schools, right? Like, just not like almost ignore, like, okay, yeah, that's debate. So what are we going to do about violence? What are we going to do about poverty? Like, but when we do this, like, it's like making him weighty. Like, Russell Westbrook, how can you represent when maybe all he really does represent is Russell Westbrook and his family and his financial interests, right?
We know,
but this is happening too much.
We know that to be true, right? About this representation, but we still can't discount the fact that, the idols that are propped up for us, that we are inundated with, that society tells us that we must pay attention to. The only thing that we can ever be as black men is athletes, is rappers, and things of that nature. So we can't discount the fact that these are the images that are put out there about us of success, people that have reached the mountaintop, people
But
that
then,
you should idolize. I'm not
Exactly.
giving
Why do
you
so many young black boys want to be rappers and basketball players
right.
and football players?
But then
How is that coming about? Because
right,
that's where the money's coming from.
right.
right.
There
But
is real
I mean,
social
this is stuff
engineering.
that you can't ignore.
right.
And then
It's
they
not,
put these celebrities as our leaders. They are the ones getting interviewed. We got Lil Wayne being asked questions about police brutality. You
Facts.
know, why is Cardi B being interviewed by Kamala Harris? Like this is what they're doing. They're not picking the brightest one of us. They're intentionally putting
Yes,
these type of
yes.
black people in
Right,
front of us
right,
to
but that's
right.
influence.
not a new.
So we can't just brush that off like it's
No, it's
nothing.
not brushing it
It
off.
may be to us, but not to you.
No, it's not about brushing it off, but it's about understanding tactics and strategies, right? We're talking about this is something that's not new, not like Cardi B being interviewed by the president. We see that, right? So is the problem that they are doing this, or is the problem that we are not fortifying our communities in way to offset, right, what's being done, right? Because
Both.
they're not going to
Both, yeah,
stop
I
doing
would agree
it.
with that.
Point blank, period. Right?
Yeah.
Someone else is going to be wearing a dress. And for those, all of us are old enough to know, what's his name? Geez, I forgot his name. Rebounder, Chicago Bulls.
Dennis Rodman.
Dennis Rodman.
Dennis Rodman married himself, wore a wedding gown, had lipstick, like dude, and he learned, from what I understand, from Madonna, like how to elicit and keep attention and make himself look. All I want to know about Russell Westbrook is can he play well with LeBron? How many points he gonna score? Dude, if you want to put lipstick on, yo, just get me 30 points. Like what I'm saying is when we start pointing and saying the media is doing this, yes. And what can we do about it? Not really a damn thing. But what we can, because we can't stop them from doing the strategy that they've chosen. But what we can do is fortify our communities in a way, fortify our men, our boys, our women, our girls, inform, teach, build structures and put structures in place so that these things come to naught. Because if all we're going to do is say, hey, look at what they're doing, this is not good, that's what they win. But if we can fortify our children, like, hey, this is a strategy. Let's talk about like whether our schools have equitable educational opportunities, right? Let's talk about how much money is going into the school. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying we ignore it, but I'm saying they are not going to stop.
Right.
So,
And
now,
I just wanted to make sure that that point was clear, because we can walk and chew gum at the same time. You know what I'm saying? I mean, the fact of the matter is, you know, yes, we're doing all of those things, but we cannot ignore the fact that social engineering is real. It is very real, and it is the driving force of this society today. Therefore, we must be invested in pushing back against certain narratives and depictions and certain modes of conditioning. It just
absolutely.
has to be. It just has to be that way. Some of us are here for that. We got to just play that part. Go ahead, brother.
Dr. Caldwell.
Can I say the art of war? And it talks about the art of war, and I'm paraphrasing. One of its tenets is to understand how to make propaganda work for you. And that's what's going on. We look at all the wars, especially the Vietnam War that all of Black people have participated in. The Vietnamese had pamphlets thrown down on a lot of the soldiers, especially for the Black soldiers. And they would always say, why are you fighting this war? You know, this war is not your war. To mess with the mind of the Black male when he was over in these jungles fighting for a war that he didn't even know what they were fighting for. Muhammad Ali, what did he say? I'm going over to kill some Black person who's never going to kill another Black person who's never called me a nigger. So we have to understand in the strategy of war that propaganda is very, very important. Think about what China just did. Did we see that in the news? Anyone? That they have totally said that we are not going to show any type of effeminate images of any Chinese in our society. They were bold with it because the art of war is written by a Chinese person, right? Sun Tzu, wasn't he Chinese, if I'm not mistaken? Correct. So they understand the art of warfare, that propaganda is part of war. And so when we are seeing the intentional use of putting Black males in dresses, this is a way of massaging, of loosening the strings of everything else can be introduced to us, and it'll be accepted by our society that easy because there's no gatekeepers to say no.
Right.
And unfortunately, it's the truth that they put these athletes and these entertainers in front as if they're the gatekeepers. And once we see that they can be compromised, it's easy enough to compromise everybody else because they say, hey, if Russell Westbrook can do it, well, I'm going to show up at the court next week and I'm gonna have a dress on.
See, and that's what I think is very important when it comes to this propaganda. And when you use the term gatekeepers, see, that's very important because we can do what we need to do within our community to fortify our community, but there are wider implications because propaganda does not only affect the way we view things, it affects the way that society views us.
Right.
So therefore, those decisions that are made through these outlets, they do come back and they visit us in certain ways. Of course they do. They visit us through policy. They visit us through so many different things that whenever one specific group is propagandized, it doesn't only affect the way you see yourself. It affects the way the world sees you.
Right. They treat us
right. We cannot divorce ourselves from that and just kind of be like, well, you know, we just got to do what we got to do and they're going to do what they're going to do. No.
Right. Wait, that's not what I said.
I was about to say, I want to hear from Dr. Green. I want to hear from Dr. Green on this, though. Dr. Green, because you seem to have something to say.
Let's be clear. So I am in no way saying ignore it, right? I'm saying accept it as a fact, right? Again, this is nothing new. So like you said, if you're looking at things like the art of war, right? So then what's the answer to it? To tell them to stop doing it? To keep telling other people we see that you're doing it? That is not, I think, going to have any other impact than give it legs. And like I said, it's a chess move. Like the way we respond to things, give it legs just as much as what they do, right? So the question is, again, you said walk and chew gum. So I think it's more important for us to make sure that our children and find ways that our children and our children's children are not looking up to the athlete, to the actor, to the YouTube star, and that happens in the home. You said yourself, your children are not looking up to Russell Westbrook to how to be a man. And why is that? Is it because you're doing the work that you need to do to make sure that your children are fortified and informed
100%.
in a way? Right. So your child is representative of all our children and our children should be handled, managed, informed, taught the same way. And then when we conquer that, there will be a new strategy. But so that's what I'm saying. It's not saying, oh, we don't have to pay attention to it. As much as I'm saying, at this point, is there anything else that we expect? Right? Because it's a setup. It's a setup to get people up in arms so they can sell more.
I agree. But I do also, just to kind of tweak a little something, you know, your question was, what are we to do? Just, you know, keep asking them to stop or telling them to stop. This is not telling them to stop. This is making people aware of what they're doing. So you understand? So our job is to inform people of the setup. Because like you said, we know they're going to do it, right? We can't stop them from doing it. They're going to keep doing it. So we must enlighten people as to what you got to put people up on game. So putting people up on game doesn't mean that you're out there saying, come on, y'all need to stop it. Y'all got to stop it now. That's not what we're saying. We just
and the thing is,
on what's going on.
Do you think it would have been different? Watch this now. Do you think it would have been different if it was LeBron James in the dress?
Absolutely, I do.
Oh yeah. Oh man.
So.
Whoa, that would have been huge.
Right.
Hold up. Wait.
That would have been huge. That would have been worse than what's happening now.
Wait, it's not.
Wait, maybe I'm wrong. Hasn't he worn dresses already?
Not that I've seen.
I don't know.
I know
he was on the cover of a magazine, a major magazine model holding the white woman.
I thought I
saw
or something.
The King Kong thing.
Yeah, the King Kong. He was holding right.
You know who else talked about it? Who else talked about this? Let's talk about the strategy so you can just put it out in full blast. Some of you may not remember Larry Johnson. I know everyone here. Larry Johnson, Grandmama.
Yeah, we remember that.
Yeah.
And he said that when he went into to make the deal, they said that they were going to do a commercial with that when he signed a contract with Larry Johnson, that it was going to be Larry Bird and Magic Johnson go into the lab and they come together and they create Larry Johnson. That's what they told him was going to be. He signed a contract. The money was all good. When he got back there, they said, okay, so no, look, this is what's going to be. You're going to be wearing this dress, right? And you're going to be dunking with the dress. So it was the okie doke. So he didn't sign up originally to play Grandmama to play basketball as a woman or a grandma in a dress. So again, this was happening with Larry Johnson back in the 80s or the 90s, right? Strong, aggressive, masculine men stick that man in the dress, right? So again, if you're saying that we're letting people know that this is going on, like I said, if you don't know that there is a contingent of artists that like putting masculine black men in dresses, then you're not paying attention. Again,
I do think we need a counter narrative.
I think the indictment, though, is in the way that we fortify our community so it inhibits the impact of the strategies and methods used against our people and our children's minds.
I do want to hear from
Well,
T.
that what I agree with though. But the thing is, I do agree that we do need a counter narrative, but I also agree with what Dr. Morris Green is saying because the thing is, I think African Americans, I think we put too much stock into celebrities
Yep.
and what they have to say, especially the ones that are being propped up. Like, all of a sudden, T.I. has a talk show and he's talking about politics. These people who never talked about politics before just get chosen by the media, and it's on us. We are listening to them. We are funding them. I don't know if you guys know a radio station called Hot 97, where there's Ebro on there, and he's a white Jewish man. And then there's a Puerto Rican woman, and then there's a Jewish guy, and they're talking about black issues. And I'm looking at the audience. I'm like, why are black people supporting this? We should be boycotting. I just can't see like black people, right? And all of like let's take for instance, all of us had a talk show, and we're talking about things that goes on in Japan. I don't think the Japanese people will really take that serious. Like, you guys aren't even. What do you guys know? But black people, I think. And a lot of this has to do with social manipulation from these celebrities in front of our leaders. We're listening to these people, and that's on us. We have to stop doing that. It's the same thing with Vlad TV. I didn't even know that man was white until I saw him. I was like, man, he's interviewing all these black people. That was a white man this whole time. It's just crazy. We are getting exploited because we are following our celebrities.
Dr. Conway.
And I call that the backhanded compliment to say that, okay, this is the most intelligent person that we can find in the black community, and his name is T.I. The most beautiful black woman that we could find to put on the cover of a major modeling magazine is Gabrielle Sidibe. Okay, that's the backhanded compliment that they use against us, is to put, now I don't want to say the worst of our society, because these people are successful in their own realm, but to speak on politics, there's way more people out there that can speak on politics, education,
and that's the thing.
Entertainment. So again, we have to understand what we call the backhanded compliment when they put these people out there purposely to make us look bad. They won't make us look bad, but they're not our best in that content area. Let's just say that.
Right. So I think that's what we really need to start thinking about, like what we're honing in on. Are we honing in on Russell Westbrook putting on the dress? Or are we honing in on, and you said we can walk and chew gum, but are we honing in on the vulnerability of our community and the trust that they have in these propped up figureheads? Is that what the problem is? And if we deal with that, what they do in terms of this manipulation of our identity becomes a moot point, and then they will do something else, right?
One of the things that Tony said, let me say this. One of the things that Tony said is very important. And you were asking him, well, what does he control? He said, I control my home. I control what my children are exposed to. And I think that's the most important thing that we can do. Whatever we're doing, we have to be able to control that environment. When people approach us, as you said, Dr. Green, if someone approaches us and says, hey, what do you think about what Russell Westbrook? Well, he had a dress on. But, what do you think about this school shooting or those shooters that, those policemen that killed that black man in Louisville? Do you know those black police officers haven't been charged yet? What do you think? What do you think about that? So we have to learn our strategies and how to flip it back on the person who's really coming to us in clandestinely to make, some type of dust up. But we have to understand learning how not to react, but how to act to situations when people approach us with these type of things.
And that's why we have to be proactive in the way that we deal things. And
absolutely.
Deal with things. And I've always been proactive with my children. And what's funny is, listen, my kids probably don't know most of the stuff that's going on with celebrities right now, and they
Right,
don't
right.
care, and I love that.
And that's
You
funny
know,
because I showed my son, and he was like, "What is that?" Because he's not really into basketball like that, which I like. I have to say, and excuse, I don't like to use this word all the time. My son's a nigga nerd, but I like it. You know what I'm saying? Because he's not into a lot of those things. He loves books, he loves reading, and I did that purposely because I said there's more
good.
to life
That's right.
than you have to have balance in this world. So
But
we have
what
to pat ourselves on the back when we are not falling into the same old pattern of the conversation of, hey, what sport does your son play? My son
Right.
doesn't play sports.
My
He
kid
played
is into
them.
manga, like like anime and all of that
Yeah.
type
Oh
of
wow.
stuff.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
not.
and,
yeah.
and that and that is that so those are great experiences, and we love that for the Caldwell family and for your family,
Mhm.
Tony, but in reality all of our children don't have a Dr. Caldwell at home, don't have a Tony Lindsay at home, don't
The
have a
broken home.
I mean, if we're being realistic, right? Like, we know that there's a lot of, so they do look up to the Russell Westbrooks, they do look up to the
Mhm.
LeBron James, because in their eyes, for whatever reason, whether it's through manipulation, through
Mhm.
media, they see that, okay, I'm 6'4", right? I'm whatever. I can jump high, I can shoot a three, I can do whatever. I'm closer to being Russell Westbrook than being Dr. Green. I'm closer to being
Well,
for whatever reason, right? Like, and I'm not saying that that's so. How do we combat that, right? Like, I mean, what are the steps that we do? Because to them, they're closer to being a Russell Westbrook than they are to being an entrepreneur, a filmmaker, activist, a doctor, a
Right.
scholar, and those things like that.
I
So
want to
that's
borrow. I just
information.
want to borrow from Dr. Green real quick because we had a previous conversation, and I want to borrow a line that you said, because you said we have to be the fathers of those young men. So for me, we have to be the ones to show them that they are closer to being a doctor or being a lawyer or being whatever it is, and not just a basketball player. So once again, he's right, because it comes back to us fortifying our community and not just doing this for our kids. See, I don't do this just for my son. I do this for all the young people that I encounter. You know what I'm saying? That's just the way I am. And I think if all of us become more proactive in that type of a role with the young men specifically in our communities, you see a difference. I speak from experience.
And
I
so
work.
you've heard this slogan, if something about if you hit, you holler, if you hit, or something like that. You like like basically
hit
if you
dog holler.
respond to it.
Or
So,
something
Hit
yeah,
like
dog
that.
holler.
whatever it is,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's always been cliche, right? Like, literally, think about that. Like, so my response to Russell Westbrook wore a dress. Nice. Next. So what we gonna do going on with the floods going down in New Orleans?
Right,
Like
right.
you said, like, come on, man, you're not baiting us anymore. You're not
Not
gonna
falling
bait
for
us.
the, I'm not falling for the banana in the tailpipe
The
trick.
Right.
banana in the tailpipe.
We
This is
stay falling for
okay.
that
Okay,
banana in the
it's
tailpipe.
a setup. So all I want to know about is what are we doing to help educate our young boys and girls in a way that because we have to get to that point. We have to make people realize that you're not going to manipulate us. Like, we're not going to do the cucaracha. You're not going to throw Chris Paul in the dress, and then we're going to be here. Oh my God, Chris Paul! It's an epidemic. It's all falling apart. Our society is crumbling before our eyes.
But do you
No,
think we play a role in that, though, by exposing them to all of these, these people that we're talking about? Like, I mean,
okay,
we, you
we can't
know,
control that, Tony.
We
We
can't
can't
control it
control that.
because, and I can
Our
speak on that.
kids,
We're,
I'm sorry, the internet, if they have a phone or if their friends have a phone, the internet is such that we cannot control the environment.
their
Point blank.
world
Period.
operates around us. We're just in it.
Yeah.
As Dr. Green was saying, I work in a middle school and I work with these young children, and they're so
Mhm.
plugged into everything,
Yep.
social media, electronics, that their world is at 45 degrees, looking down at a cell phone. I see kids walk down the hallway with a cell phone, and it's amazing how they can walk at 45 degrees and not run into anything. I'm talking about hundreds of kids in the hallway, and everybody's doing the same thing. But that's what I mean. Their world is operating around you, and you don't know who they are because they have so many different social
And
media
they're so
handles.
far more
That's
advanced than
so
we are.
true, man.
Exactly.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's
So
true.
if the strategy then, if our strategy then becomes we've got to control the environment, eh, That train has left the station. It's the information age. It's coming in at hyper speed, the speed of light. At this point, it's fortification, information fortification, teaching, support, because we can't stop or inhibit. Because even if you're not going to have a phone, your friend has a phone, or I'm gonna shut your phone off. They connect to the Wi-Fi. Like, just give it up. So now, where do we stand? Like, again, my positionality. If Russell Westbrook wants to wear a dress, put it on, man. If LeBron James throws on a dress, knock yourself out, homie. The question becomes, what ways can we strengthen our children in a way that becomes an inconsequential caricature of that individual, or maybe that's their real identity. They can have that, right? But we stop falling for the banana peel in the tailpipe. Thanks, Doc.
I don't think we're so much falling for it and being shocked about it. I think it's more of just educating Black people about what's going on, because I mean, this is just happening so much, and a lot of Black people are waking up because we have the internet. Before social media, we had no counter to this.
No.
We had no control of the mainstream media.
That's right.
So these conversations only take place. Have you noticed these serious conversations about what you're saying to Dr. Moore's mean about fortifications? It never happens in the mainstream media. You can never go to CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, where you got a Black man or woman talking about fortifying the Black community against propaganda, helping the Black community economically. These conversations never happen. So
and they won't allow it.
Of course, exactly, because they don't want Black people to be independent. So I think we do have to have these conversations. I don't think we're so much sulking over it and acting like we're about to faint. We're just educating. Right. This is what's going on, and this is what they're trying to do to us, and ways to.
Unfortunately, sometimes our silence can be translated as consent. Right. So we have a responsibility to push back at as much as possible, because when you think about it, I don't know any other group that is as targeted for propaganda than us.
Nobody else. No one.
So one comment. You know how they always say that in 2050, white people are not going to be the majority, right? And I think we know already they probably the minority. They just not counting. So they push the thing back to make us think it's coming soon when it's already here. This is my question, because of what you just said. Is mainstream media anymore? Or do we keep calling them mainstream media, and have they socialized us to believe that it's mainstream media? Because a lot of people aren't getting their information from the mainstream media, right?
Well, here's my pushback to that, Dr. Green. The reason why I would say that is because it's hard to censor mainstream media. This live or anything that you put out, or Tony or T or Dr. Caldwell puts out, can be shadow banned. It can be taken off of YouTube, Facebook. It can be taken off social media platforms. They can shut down your social media platform. They're not shutting down CNN. They're not shutting down Fox or ABC or CBS. So that's why I believe it's still going to be the mainstream, because they're the ones who are going to stay on no matter what. They can say whatever, do whatever. But if I say, there's a certain word out there that's getting a lot of pages taken down. It starts with a V and ends, you know what I mean? It rhymes with Maxine. It starts with a V and rhymes with Maxine. I'm not gonna say it, but it's getting a lot.
And remember,
let me tell you what's crazy. Let me tell you what's crazy. Dr. Green was just sitting here trying to figure out what the hell he was talking about.
I was like, what's he talking about?
A lot of those mainstream media platforms that you're talking about, they also control much of the content that you're even able to see on social media, on YouTube. They carry massive, hold on, brother. They carry massive influence. So therefore, even social media serves as an arm, a tentacle of the mainstream media when they're banning certain perspectives. They're censoring voices that push back and show and speak dissent against the ongoing narrative that is being pumped through the mainstream media.
What is the real problem, right? Again, it gets back to, are we concentrating on the fact that Russell Westbrook wore a dress? If that bothers you,
are you still on Westbrook?
I
No,
think
no,
we're
no, no.
talking about the broader issue for
I
me.
got it.
Yeah,
I got
yeah.
no, because I'm talking about levels, right? Are we talking about Russell Westbrook when address or the vulnerability of our communities? Are we talking about the influence of what we call mass media major stations, or does that then push the conversation to what do we need to do about that? Right? Because then because those two things are interrelated, right? Our ability to control our own information, right? Our own networks. And there are ways to do that so that it can't be taken down, right? If you're on certain platforms, you can be. If you're on other platforms, you can be.
Yeah,
Like so does
been
that
talking about this
mean
for a
now
while.
that
Yeah.
both of those things come to the same conclusion, that there's a lot of work for us to do that is not necessarily um related to anything anyone else does? Do you know what I mean? You understand what I'm saying, fellas?
Yeah, yeah. I think I understand what you're saying. I want to hit on one point because I've held you guys for a long time. Be sure to the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe. T, I want to ask you this. Going back to what Dr. Green said as far as the numbers and the how the white people won't be the majority by 20 whatever, and they may not even be the majority as of now. Do you think that plays a factor into why there is this toxic masculinity or black male, or the denigration of the masculinity in the black community? Because I seem to only see, when it comes to toxic, when masculinity is considered toxic, it's talking about a black man, right? Like whether the black man is the big, strong,
Good.
burly, aggressive person. Do you think that what's playing a factor into why there's such an attack on the black man, because you're trying to hold on to being that dominant society even though your numbers are starting to dwindle?
Now I'm gonna be honest with y'all. I don't think if their numbers dwindle, they wouldn't have any problem, because there's another group of people who I can't say that will probably get banned. That they had. Let's put they're the three-letter word people. They start with the J, and they are low on numbers. But goodness Lord, you say anything about them, man, your career is
Yeah,
over. We can
it's a
get taken
wrap.
down from YouTube right now. So I don't think it's the numbers. I truly think that they just don't want black people to become an economic power like that. And what Dr. Morris Green was saying, because we don't have any type of fortifications, because black people are really just focusing on what's really important to them, and we're always reactionary. We're not going to ever gain that level of power
Hmm.
to really just combat that. So yeah, until we really just get the fortification thing down, white people can be 2%, but if they got all the money, they could just pay us off. I mean,
Power,
just
right?
just look at all the black people in Congress. Look at all the black people in the media. They don't represent us. They find some random black, like, who knew who Don Lemon was before he went to CNN? Nobody knew who he was. Just some random black person, and you gonna be the face of black people. You gonna
Yep.
talk about these issues. I mean, this is what's happening to us. These people have no on the ground experience. They're just picking up random black people. So yeah, to me, it don't even matter if they are the minority until black people wake up out of this. And I think it's brothers like us that got to keep talking. I think we need this type of positive propaganda to counteract those other narratives. And yes, we do need to have a serious conversation about fortifying our community as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Once again, we're talking to fellas. Like I said, I've held you for a long time. I'll let everybody get a last word before we get out of here. For those of you watching at home, be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe. Dr. Caldwell, we'll start with you. Just your last words on the conversation. Anything that you'd like to say, or parting words?
We always have to keep learning, man. We always have to keep trying to find other groups of people who are like-minded like ourselves, especially in our community, because again, there is a specific assault on us, on our intelligence, on our ability to communicate with each other, and to come together with not only with dialogue, but also with solutions. How do we figure these things out? Because our time is ticking. They figured it out, and we just have to be aware and continue to encourage young brothers like Jeff to bring us on. We talk about these issues, but also be available to each other when we want to have a podcast and get brothers together and talk on it and speak on it. That we can bring different people from other backgrounds together, especially us in our community, and because we don't have these outlets, especially us as black men. They'll have us on talking about sports, talking about something that's very degenerate, but when it comes to talking about something that's very specific You don't really get that except on our own social media podcast. So let's continue to do this. And I thank you for having me on as well, Jeff.
Absolutely. Thank you for being on. T, your next parting words.
Oh yes, and I definitely agree with everyone here. And the beautiful thing about this is that we all may have different ideas on how to approach the
Hmm.
situation, but I love this example because none of us is really just fighting each other and just yelling at
No,
each other. You ain't this, you ain't that, and it's just sad because if you look at the mainstream media, you got black people from different sides of the aisle and they're just yelling at each other. They both want the same thing. They probably have different ways of approaching it, but we're not seen as a people who can sit down and talk things through and come up with a solution. So this is what I love about this dialogue. But back on topic, I do think that we need to have counter propaganda, counter narrative, because social media is really the first time that Black people were able to express a different narrative. We're able to see a different side of Black people that we have never seen before. And, before social media, I mean, I always thought we just constantly just ask white people to, lift us up, constantly ask white people to do for us. I never seen so many doctors, so many entrepreneurs, so many African Americans who are educated in economics who really have good ways to solve the problems that is affecting our community. So this is why you see a lot of African Americans on social media talking and try to wake people up, because this is really our only platform to wake Black people up at this time.
Absolutely, absolutely. Dr. Green, will come to you. Any parting words?
One, just wanted to say how much I appreciate sharing this space and time with such brilliant Black intellectuals. I wanted to recommend something. There's a book by uh, my brother, Dr. Tommy Curry.
Oh, brother, yeah.
Um, it's called The Man Not. It is a must read. If you want to understand the assault against Black masculinity, Black identity, in and outside of the academy, I recommend that you have to get that book, brother, Dr. Tommy Curry, one. And two, another dear friend of mine, Dr. Hakeem Alu Saeed, has a book out called Quantum Life. I think it's his journey from the streets to the stars. Buy that book. It is incredible. It is something
Yes.
that when you pick it up and you start reading it, you're not gonna put it down. If you
Yep.
don't want to read it, get the audio book. Get those two books because I think one, it talks about. I mean, they both address a very similar issue. One, his life from the bottom to the top, his struggles with racism, inequality, stratification, drugs, everything, right? And Tommy Curry, Dr. Tommy Curry, gives
Tommy
black
Curry.
men, gives people of good conscience a groundwork and empirically grounded um, um, litany of information regarding black men, black male identity, and the problems associated with the attacks against black men. So I just want to recommend those two books.
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Green and Tony Lindsay. The parting words. Any parting words?
Yeah, I agree totally with Dr. Green. Like I was really going to do the exact same thing and recommend, please look up Dr. Tommy Curry.
Oh, that's
Tommy
it.
G. Curry. This brother is on
It's
point.
crazy. It's
And
crazy.
and when we talk about, the toxic masculinity, this whole conversation, like we label certain types of behavior, like intimate partner violence, as toxic behavior. But when you look at the data, black male victimization, like say sexual violence that's committed against them in heterosexual relationships, and even as far back as early childhood, we can't ignore that. But most of the time we don't talk about that. And there are other like social factors that have to come into play, like poverty and mental health. And in fact, when it comes to victimization, black men are 1.6 times the amount when it comes to categories of psychological and physical aggression and like sexual coercion. Like I was just watching this brother Tommy Curry talk about this stuff, and it's shocking.
It's the
Like
truth.
you're seeing these things happen 60% more with black men than you're seeing with black women. Yet we categorize these traits by default as masculine. So I think we need to extract our socially engineered biases in order to have a real conversation about masculinity and femininity in a as they relate to each other in not an adversarial nature, but in a complementary nature.
Wow. Yeah, that was some great. Dr. Green, do you have something? Do you have?
No. I just want to say that I appreciate again us doing this together, and again, Dr. Tommy Curry,
Yes.
Dr. Hakeem Alusei, get those books, and then because then your conversation about this will be grounded
It
in
evolves.
it'll blow your mind. Like
Yes.
and I'm gonna say this again, Dr. Tommy Curry, the man not. He's one of those scholars that a lot of folks don't want to deal with.
Oh yeah.
Because he is brilliant in a way
You gotta
that
get that brother on here.
you got to get Dr. Tommy Curry. He's incredible. All
Well,
right.
yes. Dr. Tommy Curry is somebody
Yes.
I don't know much about Dr. Tommy Curry. This is the first time I've ever heard of him. I will definitely be going to get those books, and I hope you at home will also go get the books and educate yourselves
About to buy it right now.
yeah, I hope you educate yourselves because it's what it's all about. It's about education and continuing to grow and develop. It's not about staying stagnant. It's not about doing the same hamster in the wheelbarrow
right.
going in the same direction. It's about continuing to develop. Thank you, brothers, for coming on with me tonight. Thank you all for tuning in. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe on your way out, and we will see you next time.